All right. Good evening, everybody. Sorry about that. Bit of technical difficulty. Um, yeah, welcome to the third episode of Dual Universe Explorers. Dual Universe Explorers, of course, is a group of fans that have come together from the Dual Universe forums and various other places, such as Reddit and Twitter, to discuss the latest news about the game every week, what we think that means for the game in the long term, and what we'd like to see come out of the game. Uh, this week, by far, was an exciting week in terms of the information that we all got from the forums and from the AMA and even from Twitter. There were some highly debated topics, some topics that shed some light, or a brighter light, on what we've been told so far about the game, and even just some fun information that's come out. Of course, we'd like to remind everyone that the opinions expressed on this show are our own as fans of the game, and we are in no way affiliated with NovaQuark or anyone employed by NovaQuark. And with that, I will leave it to our host, Master Red, to introduce himself and to get us on our way.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sounds like maybe we had some Discord hiccups there, but is everybody here?
Yes, we are.
All right. So, Red, why don't you kick us off? I don't know if you were able to hear me there. I guess Discord had
Nope.
an issue.
Yeah, that didn't work out so well. Okay, so where shall we start?
Well, it looks like there's five of us here tonight. I'm sure maybe Xander might be popping in. I haven't heard from him this week. I hope everything's okay. Yeah, why don't we just take a moment to introduce ourselves really quick for our new viewers and our new guests.
Okay, I am Master Dreadstone, founder of the DOA and current host, Neo.
Oh, sounds like Neo might be having some issues. I am Yamamushi. I am the producer of this Dual Universe Explorers thing. Yeah, and I just try to organize this every week.
Let's see. Yeah, we can hear you now, Neo. There's also a bit of feedback.
Well, while Neo gets that sorted out, how about Scruggs? You're up next.
Yep, I'm Scruggs. Just gonna do a lot of mining here for the fun.
And I'm Darius Sanguininatus, leader and founder of the Terran Union.
Well,
Yes, it appears one of our members is having technical difficulties. Quite
that's all right.
interesting.
I'm sure he will join in soon enough. For those that don't know, Neapolitan is I guess he's the head of Cinderfall Syndicate. Anybody want to confirm that for me? Is that how he would like to be known?
He was one of the organizers, at least.
And I guess a great way to introduce him would be by reading it off our new website, duexplorers.com. We've gone ahead and we've set up a simple little website, a one-page website, just introduces the host and various people affiliated with the show. Kind of explains why we're here and has some links to our social media sites. But Neapolitan's bio, as listed on the website, is he likes sci-fi, he likes game mechanics and community building, which of course he is a vital part of the community here on Discord. And Wardian looks like has just joined us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Wardian?
Oh, about myself, I am a prior military man. I was an engineer in the military, and I love playing games just because, what's that meme that keeps going around? I don't choose to have one life, I choose to have many, kind of thing.
Ah. Okay, then. Yes, and as Jan mentioned, the DU Explorers website went up, and it is just a one-page website listing off everything that DU Explorers is currently. Hopefully more in the future as well. Hopefully.
Yeah. On that note, while we're just talking about random stuff here, while everybody's getting situated, I thought I would just show some of the latest newsletters from our previous guest, Porco, Dr. Porco. I'm sure he has more newsletters, and I hope he's not upset that I did not post all of them here. But here's just two quick fun newsletters. I think it's fun because NovaCort's actually getting involved in the conversation. If you follow the Twitter conversations, um, they actually play along with this newsletter stuff, so that's been kind of fun. Um, and yeah, I guess with that, I guess we can kick off the show. I guess what everybody really here is for is to learn about Dual Universe and find out anything they don't already know about the game if they're not following the forums. And of course, this is all going to be new to them. And with that, I will let Wardian kick off the first of our AMA questions. Do you happen to have any of that up, Wardian?
Yes, I do right now. I think the last one we covered was they had the Q&A. It was question 8, the sci-fi fiction. So the one after that would be, what are the differences between building and crafting? Will there be personal level crafting as well as manufacturing/production opportunities? And their response was, in Dual Universe, there are 3 creative activities by default. Building, manipulating, and using voxels of raw materials to create the shell of a construct, be it a spaceship, hulls of a wall, roof for a house, outpost, or base. Building will necessitate to have at least one core unit, an element necessary to generate a building zone where you'll be able to build a construct. Crafting, refining raw resources, using refined resources to make components, using components to make elements for constructs or gear worn by players. Crafting will necessitate to have several elements related to crafting, one to refine raw resources, one to create components, a 3D printer unit is the example they give, and one to assemble components to create an element or a construct unit, an assembly unit. Third part is manufacturing/mass production. When a player will have finalized a construct with all the voxels and elements necessary, he will be able to make a blueprint of it. He will then be able to use this blueprint with a factory unit. With the appropriate number of elements and quantity of raw matter for the voxels, he will be able to replicate the construct. Building will be as much a single-player activity as a multiplayer activity, depending of the scale of what you want to build. Building an orbital station or Stargate will definitely be a multiplayer activity, for example. Crafting will be quite easily a single-player activity, but again, if the goal is to craft in huge quantities, then it might become a multiplayer activity. Mass production will be more multiplayer-oriented due to the sheer amount of elements and resources required. It won't be impossible to manage it in a single-player activity, but in this case, it will probably be very time-consuming.
I was quite excited about this one.
Yes, this one was a good one.
I myself was a little confused. Of course, they
Which
didn't
part?
tell us everything. I'm just confused as, what it means about, if I were to go, mine iron ore, would I just be able to take that iron ore and start building a ship out of it? Or do I have to process that ore to make it something that can be used to build the voxels?
So what they talk about in the first and second part. So building is literally just the manipulating of voxels using raw materials. So I pick up Earth from patch A, and then I can reassemble the Earth into a different voxel shape. So I could build a dome, or I could, fill out those very interesting sections when I start tunneling and then make a mistake in my underground base. Always useful. Creating a foundation for any type of building platform that you want to do. Those are all examples of building. And that's just manipulating raw voxel materials. Crafting is what you're talking about, and that's the actual refining of it. So that's what they're covering in the second part, where if you want to make elements or components or anything else like that, you have to collect the raw resources, and then you have to put them through a 3D printer unit after you refine them.
Now,
I
what does that mean for things like, like if I wanted steel plates on my ship as opposed to like hardened steel or whatever? I
Well-
mean, I'm assuming that maybe you'll be able to do both, like
Well,
refine stuff.
I would assume so, but since we don't know enough about how they're going to implement the skill system, so for instance, one of the interesting ideas was that somebody brought up was being able to build different materials depending on where you build it. So like if you're in the vacuum of space, could you build a material differently using the same raw materials? Or could you build something different because you have a higher technology level under your skill tree? You're able to build things out of, you can make steel, whereas in this guy is just running around working with iron because you have a higher skill level.
I think it's probably more like you take the raw material and then refine it, and then you can, for example, use refined iron and use this as voxel material.
It'd be interesting to see if there's a cross between both aspects of it. So,
Yeah.
normally when you have voxel building games, and if you actually have to collect materials, you're collecting material, and then when you refine it, it's effectively something else. It's something that no longer has as much of a representation in the environment. In Space Engineers, that's like, I dig up iron ore, and then I refine it into steel plates. Now, these are two totally different materials now, but you can build parts with one of them, and you can't do anything with the other once you get it as a raw materials. Whereas in here, they're talking about being able to take raw materials and actually building with raw materials, which is not something that's commonly done in sandbox construction games like this.
I don't really remember how it worked in EverQuest Landmark because I try to avoid playing it, but as far as I remember in Landmark, you could do both. Like there was the refined materials, and then there was like just raw materials you could use.
You could do both, but there was a slight limitation in Landmark in which materials you could manipulate to that degree. So, like, I could create, voxel shapes out of the land, just stuff that I find in the landscape rather easily. What I could do with those voxel shapes sometimes was limited because of what the actual voxel was made out of. Like if it was just made out of dirt, I couldn't actually do much other than shape it.
Right. Well, I'm sure that we can. Sure, we will be coming back to this topic later on. But I guess to roll ahead, Neapolitan was going to read off the next question here, but just to give him the opportunity to actually get in here, we can trade him around for one of the other questions. For question number
I
two.
suppose I will read it.
Okay.
Question number 2, Tuesday the 12th, July 2016. And it's question number 10. The quote is, can we get dev blog about how Stargates are going to be built? Will players be able to fly for months to their Stargate destination instead of sending probes? And it goes on to quote here, we will make a dev blog when we have finalized all the details. The preferred method will probably be to use Stargate probes. But you could very well travel to your destination directly with your ship or your colony. However, it's likely going to be very hard to get there and survive. Think about energy, fuel, and all these demands that will be difficult to acquire on the way. But could be a hell of a journey, yes. And this is the foundation of Yama's cult.
Yes, the foundation of my cult. To give a background as to why I asked this question, was the priest in my quote religion in the game, which is the Order of Marrow or Marrowism. The priest, in order to become anointed a priest in the religion, you have to embark on one of these journeys. And now that I know this about the game, the idea was that you get a lot of the people who want to be priests into a big ship, and then the ship takes off and goes towards a star and travels for months to actually get there. And the question is, how well can people work together and play together on a ship, and can they survive together, alone in a closed quarter ship, going for months on end to their, to their new star, to their new planet. So yeah, I think this is a rather exciting part of the game, although it certainly was one of the more hotly debated topics this week.
All I can say is yes, thank God. This is the type of gameplay that I know a lot of people were actually looking forward to. Being able to just sit there and second star to the right, straight on till morning kind of deal. Being able to just outright explore the space in between planets is kind of what makes space travel games appealing. If we didn't have that, I don't know what type of game it would be other than construct on one planet and then possibly construct on another planet.
It's also fun, like, it's going to be an ordeal. Like, it's not just something people come together one day and build a ship and then go off for months on end. Like, it's probably months involved in even planning the journey, building the ship and getting everybody with the right skills on board and all the supplies you need. Like, it
you
will
say
really
that
be something.
You say that, but I guarantee you there are going to be people that are going to do that just for the challenge.
Oh,
Just
they
to
will
hop in
do
a
it
ship
very
and
well.
go for months.
Yeah, and it'll be like all those survival series YouTubes that you see with the space engineers guys who just go off in one direction and have no idea if they're going to have enough materials to get along.
Or just die out floating in space.
Yes, that too.
I'd watch that.
Now, it also points out there, and of course we had an idea about this before, but fuel specifically, it now mentions fuel as a specific element that you will have to care about. Not just energy, but fuel. So reactors, possibly even some maybe hydrogen fuel. Heck, we might even get gasoline for planetary travel at some point. It would be quite interesting. But it definitely means that you're going to have to worry about, stocking your ship up with fuel to actually get somewhere.
I'm all for it. I think it would be interesting to see how fuel is, how important fuel becomes in just like for planetary gameplay. So, for instance, if I build a small ship that goes around the solar system, are fuel constraints going to be that big of a deal because I'm in a solar system, or do I actually, when we come down to designing ships and such, I can see it being like, what is this for? Well, this is a fighter for system defense. It has absolutely no fuel capabilities. Well, what's this one for? Well, this is a fighter that you stick on, because he's an escort to, a carrier group. He has a lot of fuel capabilities. I can see people making things making ships very niche for the situations they're going to be in.
Yes. And you might actually see, an idea that I had was that some maybe, for instance, high members of an organization, they might develop their own personal starfighters or own personal escort ships, specifically for them to travel to negotiations, and as such. or they might develop something specifically for fighting. It just makes it a bit more detail. You can't have a whole bunch of everything. You have to have a whole bunch of one thing, and then
Oh
a whole bunch of
yeah,
another thing.
I really think that we're gonna see like, of course, I've been reading Dune, so that's where my head has been at for the past 2 weeks. But I foresee like when the high ranking leaders go to a delegation or a meeting, like you'll see like royal ships or just ships that aren't really built for combat so much as like showing off and being like fancy, shiny, royalty looking ships.
So, so people will have reason to come to me and have them build the giant space kraken. Excellent.
Yes, indeed. Who doesn't want a giant space kraken?
Well, like I
I'll
said,
take two.
yeah, we have a whole segment at the end of the show dedicated to going into the drama and the forums and everything. So, well,
And
Neo,
we know there's that.
welcome, Neo. I'm glad you could join us, or glad you got the technical issues figured out.
It's all good. I could hear everything. Of course, I just couldn't speak.
Yes, would you like to make your introduction now?
Sure. Neapolitan of the Dual Universe forms, and I just love the community. I don't represent any factions here.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome. Well, let's give you question number 3.
All right. The AMA question number 3 here. The question is, how character progression works in Dual Universe? Do you have character level? What about the skill system? And Nizeltar replies with, in Dual Universe, you won't have a character level. In fact, it will be more a horizontal character progression, like EVE Online. Players will be able to learn skills from various fields of activity right from the start, and we're trying to design them in a way that the first level of skill of a basic activity, that is, gathering resources, piloting a construct, using a weapon, etc., can be researched in a matter of minutes to make all basic types of gameplay available very quickly. For each basic skill, there will be a skill tree. Advanced skills will provide efficiency improvements or unlock the ability to use advanced technology for a specific activity. Here is how learning skills represented on the lore side. Do you want me to go on with the lore bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Some people may not have read this or may not have read that part of the dev blog.
Sounds good. To continue, on the lore side, cryogenic sleep maintained during several millennia has damaged memories of the Ark ship passengers. It doesn't affect instinctive memory, like the ability to talk, walk, and so forth, but knowledge is gone. Knowledge of the past is gone for the most part. Ark ship passengers might even have forgotten their family in the process as an unplanned side effect. After all, cryogenic technology has never been tested on such a long period before. The way to compensate this memory loss is to learn, again, selected knowledge through brain implants over time. A bit like when Neo learns Kung Fu and other skills in the film The Matrix, but at a much slower pace. The interesting thing is this automatic and perpetual learning doesn't prevent the character to practice another activity in the meantime. It's like a task running in the background on a computer. Such automatic learning isn't stopping when you disconnect from the game. End.
Now, this one, of course, is probably clear to everybody else, but me, I was a little confused by it. So I reached out to them on Twitter just to clarify if this meant that the skill system was going to be like EVE Online, time-based like EVE Online. And the response I got was, yes, the skill system will be time-based like EVE Online.
Well, I don't imagine how it could be any other way if they're not going to include things like character levels or a real experience system for, doing any particular task. I mean, when your MMO is not focused on the act of killing things or gaining levels, you have to have something to limit or show progression, and in this case, the only thing that they can use is time.
I think it's exciting, both because I know there's a lot of people that don't like Eve's skill system, but I actually like it. Kind of are forced to specialize in something, and you're not really forced into certain things. Like at any point in time, you could say like, oh, like I want to train. I'm using Eve examples here, but you could say, I want to train to be a bomber, and then you spend the next week or two training your skills to fly bomber ships. And then you say like, okay, now I want to do battleships, and then you spend the next month or whatever training to fly battleships. Um, so you're not really limited so much by anything but time, like you said. Um,
Well, the one thing that I noticed that the people that might have a problem with this might be for the same reasons that they have a problem with it on Eve. So a good example of the people that have a problem with it on Eve are the ones that want to pilot a particular type of ship. Let's say you want to be a carrier pilot in Eve. In Eve, that requires you to learn how to pilot ships of that class along with drones, electronic warfare, all sorts of other skills that you wouldn't normally pick up for just one type of ship.
it also kind
And
of sorry, I'll let you continue. Sorry.
no, please go ahead.
I was going to say that it also shed some light on something that they said last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. But the topic or the question that came up in the AMA thread was had to do with multi-crew ships, and they said something to the effect of, you can fly a ship by yourself, however, it will be better, or maybe not better, but there'll be an advantage to having multiple people on your ship. And I think that this question in particular expands on that topic, because you could see like, if I put, my skills into a jack of all trades kind of system so that I can fly, a capital ship or a battleship, um, I might not have that great of gun skills because my time in the game has been spread so thin across all the skills that I'm not really an expert at shooting guns or an expert at flying or an expert at sensors or engineering. I can do them all to the level that I'm required to, but I'm not really like perfect at them. So the advantage would come like you would go find a player to, you'd find crew, and you might find people who have trained in gunnery, and they might have better skills in shooting gun. They may have better targeting skills. And when I say skills, I don't mean like um, twitch skills, like clicking the mouse fast enough. I mean like Eve skills, like when you have targeting skill in Eve, what that means is it reduces the amount of time that it takes for you to lock onto a target. Or if you have a better gunnery skill, what that means is there's a small bonus to the damage that you do, stuff like that. And so that really expands on that topic, at least in my mind, what a crew actually provides to a ship.
Yeah, so oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I was also quite excited of this news because I was a bit afraid that the skill in the research system would somewhat incorporated. So that if you unlock a skill, you get blueprints in such. But now the skill system is confirmed that's only affect operating skills.
I think in Eve, now someone may correct me by all means because I was never really an industrialist in Eve. But I think in Eve, the skill system was to the effect where, you may need a certain skill, or you may need to unlock certain skills in order to build certain things. Um, like I know, as far as I remember, you had to have like industrial ship. Like if you wanted to make a mining ship, you needed to have the skill in order to unlock the ability to use those blueprints. Um, Now I don't know how that would carry into Dual Universe.
Well, from how they responded to that question in here, it seems like actual construction of being able to build with certain materials is going to be limited by what skills you have. That's what I took away from it. I could be completely wrong, but
I mean, it's a cool way of looking at it too. Um,
I have an interesting thing to ask you all.
shoot.
Down in the lower section of the response, it says the interesting thing is the automatic learning, but it doesn't prevent the character to practice another activity. Do you think that learning new skills might be two-phase, that you have that background learning going and potentially a sort
Oh.
of XP trickle in?
I think what they mean by that is, if I set my character to learn something, it doesn't mean that I can't do anything with that character. I can continue playing the game.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like the Eve mechanic, where like, if I'm learning how to be an industrialist or whatever, that doesn't prevent me from getting in a ship and going and mining or doing whatever I want. But it could
All
be the
right.
other way.
Well, that's what I was thinking the Eve way as well. I just remember from a very long time ago a couple whispers that it might have both systems combined somehow for a special DU system.
I do remember. Now, someone has to refresh my memory on where this came up, but I remember the topic of, there might be ways of improving the speed at which you learn something, or like getting skill in another way by doing
I think
something.
that came from other topics that people had posted in the idea forums, just for things like food or cybernetics. Including that type of system that might, improve the speed at which you learn, or you could take a cybernetic that would give you the skill, but it would not necessarily give it to you at the highest level. You wouldn't have to gain any experience in it, but it'd be stuck at like level 3 if it has any levels.
That makes sense.
And it was an interesting idea, but it's one of those things like, how would you balance this out? That would require a lot of forethought on exactly where you can go with the skill trees and what would be overpowered in, like, saying, here, have this piece of cybernetic technology that gives you the ability to shoot guns at, an exceptional level. Not the best level, but an exceptional one.
Well, since that was my question, anybody have any further thoughts on?
I'm sure that I will, but I'll have to collect that for the end of the show.
All right, I guess we'll move on then.
Yes. Next up is Scruggs to hit up QA question number 4.
All right. So I've got, will the game have concrete interactions between the avatar and instructs, I guess that's structures, beyond walking in them and sitting in the piloting chairs? And the answer for this is, in the long run, not necessarily in alpha or even beta, you'll be able to make hangars where things or ships are stored. You could use screen units to make interactive games in Lua, of course. You will have to manage weapons, repair systems, fuel management, etc. There will be scanners and probe launchers to be able to analyze planets, explore, etc. The principle is simple. Each unit is an interactive element that you can interact with to fulfill a particular function. It's modular and almost always scriptable, so we expect to come up with many fun ideas in the future to provide interesting interactions. I like that they kind of put this in here, because it basically means that, like, yeah, they're going to have stuff that we can interact with. We're going to be able to script it ourselves and kind of make it show what we want it to show. And we're going to need to have those things to manage the weapons and the repair systems and the fuel, look at the fuel management system and things like that. I think that's kind of cool. So you could have somebody who actually just monitors those things.
I find it interesting just to sit there and see that, although they say not necessarily in alpha or even beta, I'll be able to make hangars or have places where ships are stored. That suggests to me a lot along the lines of what type of complex blocks, I guess you could say, elements, whether they're voxel meshes or just, voxel elements or mesh elements that can interact with and hold like a ship in place, or makes something contact with another that's not necessarily built into part of it. That says a lot for the mechanics. And as for the particular functions, whether it's always modular or scriptable. I just went on to a forum where they were talking about, complexity and depth of a game and how you don't necessarily want to make something incredibly complex. This is one of those things where I look at it and go, this is going to be such a complex game that the ones that are really good and really enjoy playing this game are just going to have this particular skill set that you don't find in the average player. The average player is going to look at what most people, what the really good players can do in this game, and just be like, "How the hell do I compete with this?"
Well, that's why it's about who you know. I mean, if you know some of the people who are really good at scripting in Lua, I mean, and you're really good at building, or maybe you're not good at building, but maybe you're good at getting some resources. I mean, you guys can all.
It's all about those connections.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about who you can get with to make the best stuff that you can make. I mean, I see all of this kind of meshing into the fact that it's an MMO. Like, they want people to play together, and this fits right in with that, because it allows people to specialize in something that maybe not everyone can do, and maybe you can all learn it, but it has to you learn Lua outside of the game, not in the game. I mean, of course, you'd probably be able to experiment with it in the game, but learning it isn't a skill you learn outside.
I think that's something certainly that a lot of people need to take into mind or take into account, is that I see a lot of complaints about features that people say are going to be too complex, or they're going to ostracize or make it too hard for players who otherwise don't have those skills to play, or maybe the solo player, et cetera, et cetera. But when you read something like this Q&A question, it really tells you that that's the point, is that they are making it so that you have to work with other people, and I'm sure they're more than aware that not everybody knows how to write Lua, or even wants to learn how to write Lua. But there are people who do and who want to do it, and you'll have to work with them. Really, just everybody in the game, everything has to work together. And if there's something too complex, or if there's something that's going to ostracize the solo players, that seems like it's kind of the point.
I think no matter what happens, how people jump into this game, or what their expectation is, everybody who plays this game is going to find themselves in that situation where they're just going to look at it and go, crap, I got to learn how to do something that I don't know how to do. Every single time. Every single player will inevitably run into that point where they go, I don't know how to do this. I have to go learn how to do this.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's definitely, I feel like this is definitely good, because it's allowing people to see that, okay, if I want to play by myself, I have to kind of go the extra mile and learn something outside of the game. And they don't have to learn a lot. It, just enough to maybe get by, or make a basic, targeting system for their weapons or something like that. I mean, scripting and stuff like that is not incredibly difficult to learn. It just takes a little time to get, really good at it.
It does. Fortunately, you don't have to go to college for this one.
No, it's very easy to learn. I will actually start up a thread later for anybody who wants to learn Lua scripting, as with instructional videos and wiki pages and all sorts of good stuff.
I will say, just throwing it out there, I am working on a site that I haven't told anybody about, that is it's going to be a database for the dual universe Lua scripts. And it's a site, mainly as like a tutorial site, and as a site for people to share their code, kind of like GitHub, but for dual universe Lua.
Oh man,
Dual
you
Hub.
just killed one of my posts.
You can still post about it.
Well, I was debating on whether or not people would actually go for that kind of thing, because on the one hand, yeah, it's nice that everybody wants to share. On the other hand, you're going to have that one guy who sits there and goes, no, I don't want you to have this, because I want you to come to me whenever you want a script.
Well, posting a script online and explaining how to make that script are different things. Because I mean, I could look at a script and be like, I have no idea how to recreate that. I mean, I could just copy and paste it. but to really actually understand it is a different thing.
And really, like, a lot of complicated stuff requires, a lot of smaller, simple units. And I think that there, of course, will be the people who have their stuff secret, but there's always going to, be the potential for them to build this massive code base and use bits and pieces that other people have open source. And sometimes, you don't have a more efficient way of doing something. Like, you can only get so efficient in your way of opening a door. Like,
I can see that. I mean, like, I've once again, I'm going to draw from Space Engineers because it's the closest example we have to a game where you can construct and program like they're planning on doing Universe. I can build drones utilizing sensor systems in the game, the vanilla game, and have them do some incredibly complex things. And every single one of you can pick up that game and put sensors on a drone and then reprogram it as you will. Whether or not you can get it to do what you want, totally different
that's
story.
a nice story. Yep. That is Space Engineers in a nutshell. Okay, then.
Awesome. Did anyone else have any other commentary on this question?
I don't believe so.
I'm sure we will again at the end of the show. But
We always do.
moving on, let's hit up Q&A question number 5.
Yeah, and I'll be reading that one. So, Friday the 15th, July 2016, the question proceeds to read, we know that constructing ships and stations will be possible in DU. What about the creation of your own weapons, perhaps armor and tools? Obviously, there's crafting, is there? But every faction needs their own unique gear, in my opinion. Otherwise, everyone will be walking around using the same weapons, tools, etc. And the reply goes on to say, at the moment, the ability of designing and crafting customized weapons relating to a specific faction or organization is not planned. Designing and building constructs, spaceships, or stations involves voxels, making construct customization possible for players. On the other hand, crafting enables players to make gear and elements. These are non-customizable 3D models, meshes. It would require to make a 3D modeling tool inside Dual Universe to enable players to customize their gear, and would represent a tremendous amount of development time. However, the dev team prefers to keep some control on the artistic vision for the game. There were a lot of people disappointed by this, because everyone wanted their own custom clothes.
Well, yeah, how can I be a space wizard if I don't have my cool space wizard robes?
Much like many things, though, I think that if enough people ask for this, that this is something that they may consider in the future.
Yes, it definitely seems like it could be something that they might consider, maybe coloring, for example. I could see that actually being very possible.
And it definitely doesn't sound like something that would be too difficult. I mean, if you're just changing the colors on, like certain pieces of the, the
Yeah.
stuff. But
sorry to interrupt, but suppose says designing and crafting customized weapons, not clothes.
Not close, but it goes on to say gears, models, stuff that the player would make gears and elements. So I think we might be able to assume close. Let's hope that they actually might do something like a color customization. I really hope so. Also, Shadow Lord Alpha joined. Welcome to DU Explorers. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
I think he's being a little shy.
Sorry about that. I'm Shadow, or SLA, or whatever people decide to call me at that day.
Yep.
He's evil.
And apparently I'm now evil.
Every time I see you show up, I get this image of Darth Vader marching down the hallway towards me.
Oh no, that would... I am your father.
That would just be weird.
Especially with your voice.
Huh?
I specifically imagine Shadow Lord Alpha as Darth Vader with that voice. I mean, with his voice, just doesn't sound right, and just as ultimately just as creepy.
Last night, a an image was posted in Discord that I had missed on Twitter, and it was a image of a piece of hallway. Like
I see.
yeah, I don't know
Oh,
how
I saw
otherwise.
that one.
I'll try to post it here if I can. Let me go dig it out of my pictures folder here.
From what it looks like, it's just basically a more detailed side panel for like a hallway, like you said.
More detail, the better.
Well, because you can't get extreme detail from 25 centimeters, so they gave you even more detail.
So what they said was, well, sorry.
I was just going to say, so are you saying that that appears to be like just a mesh?
Well, no. The reason that I bring
appears
this
to be
up,
just a mesh that you would stick on your construct.
they said having voxel walls can be a bit crude. This may be a way to improve it. This is wall covering, is what this picture is, not
Similar
a
to
hallway.
wallpaper.
And somebody asked them, like, are we going to be able to customize this or like customize these things? And what their response was currently there's no plans to allow for customizing decorative elements. But I did reach out to them. I didn't get a
Pretty sure
response.
what he said was mesh elements, but yeah.
Mesh elements?
I think they said mesh elements. Because there's the voxel stuff that we can build and make that look however we want, shape-wise. And then there's like mesh elements which are components and things that won't change based on the voxels. So
the
like
conversation,
seats, the cockpit, engines.
The conversation here reads, somebody asked, will these have features that would allow us to change the color of the lights? And their response was, at the moment, no customization for interactive or decorative elements is possible. And then they also said, it may be considered in the future, but we can't promise anything at the moment. I asked them if they're going to provide us with the light assets for us to create our own covers, like our own things that look like this. I didn't get a response yet. Of course, it was late at night on a Friday, so I wasn't going to get a response.
Well, they showed us attachable light mesh elements before, particularly in that one video where they were just dissecting the ship and rebuilding it slightly. They were sticking new light elements there, but that a lot of that comes. I think that comes down to a designer's actually a programmer's limitation. You know, can you make it so we can have like all this different stuff? Yeah, sure we could. It's not going to run very well if we let you all have these different options.
Well, certainly something to think about. I hope we get more information about that this week, or maybe even just more screenshots that explain what it is exactly this means for the game.
I hope we at least get colored lights for like the outside.
What I will say is that not everybody wants the inside of their ship to look the same, so I'm just going to put that out there.
Well, yeah, but I think Shadowload wants a disco ship.
No, the color lights for the outside would be for like running lights. So red on one side, white on the other, and different numbers for which is top or bottom.
My comment was in regards to if this is the interior ship decoration pieces they have, I'm just saying that not everybody wants the inside of their ships to all have the same texture.
That's true. I'm pretty sure they've got tile as well, though, and you don't have to use the wall. If you look at the giant command center one, that's way too open to have walls or anything. So they've got windows, and I think they have a tiled floor there. I think. I'm not sure.
Well, on that note,
I wonder if down the line they might be open to having an external program and not them making something, but just coming up with a unified format for everyone to submit.
Like Steam submissions.
Yeah.
Or like what Counter-Strike does.
Yes, and then giving them, the chance to say yes or no to player submissions.
I could definitely see something like that. There are plenty of other games that do that, where they just, people vote on them, and if it wins enough votes, then the developers include it in like the next game update. such.
I think the main thing they wanted to do, though, was keep control of the artistic direction of the game.
Well, which is why they could review it. I mean, it's not like there's going to be a whole bunch of things going up for them to review. I mean, there might be, but again, I mean, there's going to be some things that they'll look at and be like, no, this doesn't fit. I mean, pretty easily.
And what does that actually mean when they say they want to maintain control of the artistic direction?
The details and things.
If they want striped wallpaper, they don't want players coming up with polka dot wallpaper.
Pretty much.
Likewise, if they want polka dot wallpaper, they don't want players coming up with striped wallpaper. Pretty simple.
Well, from the way they responded to that question, I believe it's the third sentence. On the other hand, crafting enables players to make gear and elements. I think they specifically want it so when you craft certain items, which will include like weapons and gear items, that those are going to be some type of element item that you cannot modify. So, designing your own weapons, as much as we'd like to, as much as I'd like it, it's probably not going to happen.
It's not feasible for like any game.
No, it's not. I agree, it's not. But still,
the thing I'm kind of concerned about, though, is with you bringing that up, is that are we going to be forced to use that type of siding for a ship in order for it to be considered a ship or recognized in the game as a ship? I mean, I'm really hoping not. But at the same time, like, if building or if being able to create that, the ship wall, and that's what comes out, and that's what needs to be on the ship to be, considered a ship wall, I would be concerned about that. Because if I don't want to have that in my ship anywhere on there, then, I don't want to have to add it in there.
I also think about things that you wouldn't think of first as weapons, but like, if I have a rocket on a ship, like if I build a ship that just looks like a rocket and I put it on a track, can I engage that rocket and make it fire straight into something? And is that considered a weapon? Or is that just thinking outside of the box?
Well, that is thinking outside the box, but you have to keep in mind some of the other things that they've brought up before, like they've actually mentioned how collision systems will work in the game, where they don't plan to have it. If I collide into you with another ship, or whatever counts as a ship, it's not actually going to hurt you. Now, how they resolve that, whether or not we just bounce off each other or we just slip around each other, I have no idea. They haven't mentioned that, but they've made it clear that their intention is that, physical collisions cannot happen in the game.
It's a shame. I wanted to see sparks.
Yeah, I wish they wouldn't do that, because we know they have a voxel damage engine, or at least that physics part.
Right, but the voxel damage engine can easily, depending on how it resolves itself. So let's say I have a program, which is the gun firing at a target. The program can specifically say, okay, it deals this much damage to this type of voxel, and that's very simple. Whereas if I take another voxel and slam it into if I take two voxels and slam them into each other, now I have to have a physics engine has to be able to resolve that. It's got to be able to resolve how much damage that each voxel is doing to the other, depending on what this voxel is made out of compared to what this voxel is made out of. How fast was this voxel going? How fast was the voxel that it hit was going? How do I render this?
That would just be one vector, by the way.
True. But you kind of see what I'm saying. Now I'm talking one voxel versus another voxel. Now we're going to talk about if you include impact in the game. If I have two ships hitting each other, now I have to figure out all those voxels as they slide or collide into each other. That's a lot more complex. It's just one of those
not more complex, just more calculations.
Yeah,
they can't really do.
It starts out simple, but it exponentially gets bigger.
And then imagine on a server with thousands of people there, which are crashing their ships together.
It
Yeah, it's
certainly
just
it limits some gameplay, but on the other hand, like it also limits gameplay in a way that is also beneficial for some people. Of course, if you're flying a capital ship, like, and you spend all the time flying a capital ship, you don't really want to be disabled because someone rams a ship into you. Although on the other hand,
true.
you kind of want to be the guy that's ramming the ship into somebody else.
Everyone
True,
wants
and
to be that guy.
yeah,
That's why you make exterior armor correctly.
this is always one of those things. Like, how do you balance all those things out? Like, and once again, I'm going to reference Space Engineers. In Space Engineers, if I take a large ship block and I slam it into a tree, for instance, the damage is just catastrophic. Whereas if I use small ship blocks, it bounces off the tree. Now,
Well, you know, sometimes it bounces off the tree, sometimes the tree goes flying into space. But
right? But in either case, the physics behind the two blocks, the two different types of blocks that you build with, are completely different. And how do you resolve those things with just if you just give everybody freeform building like they're pretty much allowing us? How do you resolve all those things? Because there's just so many billions of different combinations. You just can't sit there and go, yeah, we thought of everything. That's never going to happen.
It also, if there was the ability for you to just ram into big ships, you kind of would not want to build big ships. It would kind of discourage you from doing that. But now this kind of encourages it because, yeah, you
Once
can kind
again,
of build
now you're
a big
saying
ship.
that the problems that whenever they come up with game balance decisions, you're going to lose something. And in this case, now it's going to be, well, that means I can just slam my ship into your ship and not worry about it. Great. I'm going to use that tactically somehow.
I can use it tactically. I've had it used against me in other games that don't have collision damage. I have a ship that's actually really strong if you attack it from the sides. But if you attack it from the bottom, it can't do anything. So it's a broadside ship. But I've had people come up that are really small, like support ships, and just sit on top of me and just continuously fire, and I can't do anything about them because they can easily outmaneuver me, and I can't get away from them or anything.
Well, it will definitely influence ship design, depending on how they incorporate collisions or how voxels interact with each other. All these things will influence ship design. Somebody pointed out to me that the best ship designs that you could possibly make in an absolutely realistic setting would all look like Star Destroyers. Because with that
Not
wedge
Star
shape...
Destroyer, they'd look like Borg cubes.
No, actually Star Destroyers. Because the way that they put it out was with that wedge shape, that diamond wedge shape in particular, you get the most amount of coverage with weapons in the most amount of area. You cover a greater amount of space. The only place that they're vulnerable to, or they would have less coverage in comparison to everything else, is directly from behind.
Have they said yet if your own turrets will damage you if they shoot through your ship?
I don't think they have. I don't know exactly how realistic placement of weapons is going to be. They've stated that they
will just because of the tab targeting.
Well, yes, but they've stated that they want things to be somewhat realistic. Like if I place an engine on a ship, I have to place it in a manner which will make the ship balanced. Otherwise, it'll just fly funny. If they're going to that level of realism, I'm assuming, this is, yes, an assumption, that they're going to make the gun systems so, like, if I place it on the right side of my ship, I'm not going to be able to shoot on the left side of my ship with those guns.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but I'm also assuming they won't even allow it to lock on. But you know.
Somebody had asked on YouTube, somebody had requested us to bring up this topic, which was, I'll just read their comment, and I don't if you're watching this, I don't want you to think that we're attacking you. I just want to answer your questions or your concerns. Um, you the comment was too early to give up on first-person combat. There's no technical reason to sacrifice it, really. I hope there's more people pledging for it in the forums to make them reconsider. Eve-style point-and-click combat is just dreadful and would be a fatal writing on the wall for an otherwise promising game, I think. On the first note, I don't think that they actually have said that they're going to sacrifice first-person combat. I think that it's just going to look a little bit different than um, like a Call of Duty or a Battlefield type first-person combat game, or even PlanetSide, I guess, would be a better example here. I think it's going to resemble more something like Star Wars: The Old Republic or World of Warcraft type PvP combat, more than anything. As for the question about, or the concern about Eve-style point-and-click combat, I can see the negatives. I can see why people aren't happy about that. But then I also see the technical reasons why they have to do it that way, as opposed to free-for-all, free-form combat.
But I want to be able to shoot Mac cannons into space and not have to worry about them.
So, any thoughts on that?
All the once. It comes down to the idea of how many players you can fit into a single shard and have fighting at once. I mean, it's just not realistic. I understand what that person says, that they don't think that limitation actually exists. It does. I mean, if you try and find
each person you have, the amount of data the server has to send, it grows exponentially.
Yes, it's simply, even games like Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous, there is an upper limit to how many people can be in a space at a time. For Star Citizen right now, they're running about 20 per instanced area. And that's a technical limitation because they want to be able to have like first-person shooting. They want it to be a true space sim. And that has its limitations. You can't run that many people, no matter what.
Well, games like Mass Effect, not that this game would have the ability to pause and think about your actions in combat, but, maybe it would be something more like that. You're thinking about what you're doing, you're locking onto people, and then, committing your actions.
I think that from their game design, from the skill system to lots of things that they told us about the game just kind of play into this direction. Like, it wouldn't really make sense to have a free-form combat game and an Eve skill system. Like,
I can see what you mean by that. It's definitely not going to be. I seriously doubt the game is going to be weapon based, like most first-person shooters are, and I seriously doubt it's going to play ability based like most MMOs are. Somebody used WoW as an example. It's like, well, we could have all these different abilities on our hotbar for each of the weapon systems. Like, I don't think that's gonna happen. You may have a different weapon system.
I see it being more like Star Wars: The Old Republic style, where like, in my, the way I kind of piece this together in my head is, with an Eve skill system, say you had like hand-to-hand combat skills or skills for using blaster rifles versus, pistol weapons or even swords or crossbows or whatever. And as you level up those skills, kind of like in Eve, as you level up skills, your damage output would be different. Like you would get bonuses to the damage that you're doing. And then the weapons that you buy, the skills may even determine what tier of weapons you can buy. And then the weapons would be, would also have their own bonuses. So you're it's not like, buying a different gun in Call of Duty where the differences are that drastic. But it'd be more like buying, a gun in Star Wars: The Old Republic, where the main differences in a gun, maybe the way the texture it has and the sound it has, the main differences are going to be the bonuses that it gives you to combat. So you lock on somebody, and then if you had a set of skills or whatever that you would use on your hotbar, it would be like, one shot, double shot, precision shot, something like that, that you would also get by leveling up your skills in an EVE Online type mechanic.
Interesting. I could definitely see that that would expand the gameplay options. You have the one guy who's really good at ground combat, and he's the guy that you keep as a Marine on your ship whenever somebody tries to board you, for instance. It could be interesting. I suppose it all depends on the developer's vision of the game. How involved do they want ground combat to be in comparison to space combat?
Well, I also think, I guess my terms of thinking along that line is kind of plays into the hotly debated topic of space travel and stargates. And before I get on that, I'll say why I'm leading there is that the reason that they wanted all that stuff, the quote was they care more, they can build gigantic, universes and billions of planets, but that's not really the point. The point for them is they would rather have populated worlds rather than everybody getting their own planet, or just being able to going out on day one and going to a different star system without any jump gates, just really fast.
Well, maybe not on day one.
Not on day one, but the point is that they want populated planets, and with populated planets, you kind of have to. If we're going to be spending a lot of time on a planet, then I think that first-person
ground combat.
Yeah. But how they implement ground combat is, up in the air right now.
Kind of hoping they eventually allow us to destroy whole planets, but
You're going to be a guy that builds planet killers, aren't you?
I will say I'm not
the guy who builds planet crackers.
I'm not going to work on a Death Star unless
anymore?
that Death Star is usable.
Well,
Yeah,
it wouldn't be a Death
no.
Star. It'd be more like the Ishimura.
Well, we'll be able to destroy the planets by mining the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Maybe they can give us a special module that is planet-sized. It would take us a year to build that can actually eat the cores of planets.
See, the core is what I'm after because that's got a massive amount of resources in it. Usually at least one type.
Well, to get back on the original topic, just for the person that said it's too early to give up on first-person combat and there's no technical reason to sacrifice it, the truth is there really is a technical reason to sacrifice it.
Ray tracing is hard.
Think about how many people you can stuff into a PlanetSide 2 server, and then about how many people will be at the Ark ship on Alioth.
Right, and PlanetSide 2, as an example, is one of those games where they've actually streamlined all the different aspects of the game. So, if I play one faction, it's largely the same as another faction other than color. The weapons may have some slight differences, but they are
Those suits
largely
are
all
actually
the same.
different.
Yeah. I
So
understand.
It's
They're
mostly just
different,
cosmetic things that are different, like you said.
right.
I don't
So
I don't see them sacrificing it though. I really don't see them skipping over it. Like
No.
I think that it won't be the focus of the game, but I think that they definitely will implement it in some form. Like if you
We
if you
just
want
have
to
to let
want
the
to
universe be its own beast.
Well, I mean, if you want to take over, a city or something, like you don't want to have to get in a ship and shoot from the air to take it over. Like you kind of want to go into the city and shoot at people to take it over.
If only we had space to ground combat.
Mix.
I've heard that they have ideas for weapons that will do that. but they just haven't really explored it that much yet. They have other concerns to deal with first, but it is planned.
Well, I guess on the topic of the hotly debated topic of Stargates, and the whole issue of space travel and why it takes forever to get to another planet, why make people have to travel for months on end or send probes on end to get to another planet before colonizing one?
Do you
And
want to get there and then just die because you can't get anything done?
Yes.
that plays into, you have to build a ship and you have to, think about what you're doing. You have to get all the resources. You have to survive somehow to make the journey there.
See, I'm not expecting drones to be the first things to send out. I'm expecting them to be a later tech that we get after we've got like at least a few Stargates set up already.
I think this one will come down a lot to the idea between what the developers want and what they'll actually be able to successfully implement. So by that same token, if I have to sit there and plan for an exploration to just move out amongst the stars, because there's no telling if what I need is going to be out there, by that same token, I can say the exact same thing about, sending out a probe to build a Stargate. I might show up on a planet and be like, this place has nothing but sand. I'm screwed.
Well,
Yeah,
that would be why you don't actually go out there. That's why you send a probe. And
exactly. Yeah, because you'll still
The
be able
probe
to
would
go
be
out there, but once you get out there though with the probe, I'm not actually sure how the probe thing is going to work.
They're talking about putting on different probes that you put on your ships so you can sit there and find out whether or not a planet has all the resources you need. I don't think that probe's going to tell you as much as you think it is.
No, that's not what the probe is. The probe is something that you build. Yeah, you actually send an unmanned probe out into space and you wait for months before it gets there. And once it reaches your destination, then it goes into a protection mode and you can jump ships to the probe in order to build the other side of the Stargate.
Yeah, so that way you'll be able to, travel to that area, build your Stargate, and that way you're not, stuck out there in the middle of nowhere.
The confusion here is because the question that I asked was, instead of sending a probe, can I just go out there myself? And that's when they said, yes, you can do that. So you have the option of going out there yourself, but in most cases, you're not going to do that because it's so difficult. In most cases, you're just going to send out probes and wait for them to get there.
And I think this is a good thing because it does play into what the devs want, which is basically they want populated planets and they want people to play together. I mean, if it takes a long time to get somewhere, then people are going to be more likely to, play together to get things done, to get probes built to send out, or even so that they can work together and build ships to make that travel happen or gather together all the resources they need to make a trip like that.
And the reason this whole Stargate topic even came up with them is because when they were asked, how are you going to limit space? How do you limit people from reaching the edge of the galaxy, in 1 week? And the answer that J.C. Bally gave was time. Time is the thing that limits people. And, technology. There will be various levels of technology that are unlocked, like faster than light travel, and then Stargates. And he explained the whole Stargate situation. But in another interview on the faster than light travel, they kind of expanded on that. Faster than light travel is kind of a misnomer because it doesn't really mean what people think it means. If something is 5 light years away, that means it still takes 5 real years for light to get there.
Well, it's iffy there because light has a different time than we actually have.
And
it's weird. The
goes along
faster you
with
go, the stranger time gets.
Well,
indeed.
I doubt they're going to go into relativity. This is the reason why, like in Star Trek, they have warp drive, so you can have those types of stories without having to worry about things like
Even
actual
in Star Trek, it
science.
takes months to get places.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
but they
something that's not ever expanded on in Star Trek, is that when you watch an episode, that's actually like a month going by.
Still, that's what I'm saying, though. Yes, that may be a month going by, but they're still ignoring pretty much all of relativity when they do those types of things. There's a reason they do that, because otherwise it would just make certain stories impossible.
They don't ignore relativity usually.
And they want people. He said that, if somebody is going to get a planet, it's because if space expands like that and people are discovering new planets, it's because they had a reason to get there, like either to get resources or to have their own territory or whatever. But there's a reason that people come together and
That's
put all
why I
the
want a
effort into
planet
getting out
crack.
there.
Well, I imagine that if that's the goal that they want to accomplish, they're going to be imposing other limitations after the game launches, because how do I put this? Yes, I can see that they have a certain vision for their game. They have to understand that players also have their own vision on how they want to play a game, particularly if it's a sandbox game. I use this saying a lot. I don't go to McDonald's and see only Big Macs on the menu because it's the only thing that the manager likes. You cater somewhat to our desires here. And if our desires are to, I don't know, ignore the artificial limits you want to put onto expansion, you're going to have to put a lot more artificial limits onto expansion, because we're going to find a way around it as players.
I don't think they're trying to prevent you from expanding. They're just trying to make it go at a pace that allows enough new players to come in as we're expanding out. And not everyone's going to want to leave. There's some people that are going to want to stay, so that way they can set up and sell resources to the newer players that come in. I mean, some people, if they're going to be relatively large planets, I mean, there may not be people who want to leave. Some people may want to find a place.
You probably won't need to at all.
Yeah. I mean, you probably won't have to leave. And so maybe you do want to go and explore. And the only thing that's going to be limiting you from that is the initial startup phase of, everyone having to gather resources and kind of work together to get everything started. And then, once that's happened, if you want to leave, go ahead. But I think that, there's going to be quite a few people who will want to stay.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see that.
I would say it also depends on what you need. If a populated area can get you certain things that you can't get on your own, then yeah, you're going to keep coming back to populated areas. Which is another thing they went into, like the push-pull or whatever they called it. Every reason to go out into space, there's another reason to come back to a populated area.
Exactly.
And I don't see it taking months to get to another planet in the same solar system, but I see it taking months to send a probe out to another star. And that makes the most sense to me. And if something is going out into deep space, it'll travel from 3, 4 months, 5 months to get out there, and then
It's taken us how long, and we barely have a probe outside outside our solar system.
and when the probe actually gets there, it's not like you're not doing anything in those 4 or 5 months. You're still surviving on the planet. You're still building and being part of the economy and playing the game. It's kind of like an Eve where you have Titans, and Titans take months to build and tons of resources. But while Titans are under construction, it's not like nobody's not doing anything.
Of course not. They're also busy defending that construction, because nobody else wants you to build a Titan in Eve.
Mm-hmm. And the kind of parallel that I would see, that mechanic, having to defend something while you're waiting, the mechanic I would see is you set up a station that your probe communicates with, and if somebody destroys the station, then you have to defend the station while the probe's going out there instead of trying to go out there yourself.
I'm just interested to see how the Stargate system works out, depending on so if I send a probe out to get coordinates and then I can FTL jump to that location, is it always going to be the same location?
I need to interrupt here real quick.
Okay.
Scruggs, thank you very much for joining us tonight. and we hope to see you again next time.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys. I'll see you
Yes,
next time.
thank you.
Have a good
Have
one,
a good
Scott.
night.
Chugs.
Yeah,
Alright.
catch you later.
Right.
All right, carry on, my friend.
Well, do you see what I kind of mean? I mean, is it going to be exacting in the coordinates that you show up at? You're just going to arrive at the exact same place every single time when you jump into the system, or is it going to be somewhere in the planetary system? Because otherwise, there is nothing to stop somebody from going, I'm going to spend all my time just so I can get a planet all on my own. In fact, I'm going to make it so whenever anybody else jumps in, if they don't have my permission, they just get blown to crap.
And the other thing is, they never said probes were going to be hard to build. That could be a whole industry in itself. Like, oh, I just make probes and I sell them on the market so that people can go, do whatever they want with them. If somebody wants to send 100 probes out in all directions, sure, like, I'm selling them by all means.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder if you could actually make a business off of that.
I'm
Space
sure-
probes.
I'm
If you
sure there's
can,
going to
I
be
will probably do it.
I'm sure there are going to be people making businesses off of all sorts of aspects of the game. Just because you get a space probe doesn't mean, just because you get a planet location doesn't mean you know what's there. So there could be guys whose sole job is, what do? I prospect planets. I tell you what's there and whether or not it's...
Have you not seen like half the organizations? I have an entire job that ODY has an entire job that's just prospecting.
Right. I mean, there's going to be a lot of competition with that if they don't do it all in-house themselves. I mean, if you want to be the guy that, what do? I prospect planets. Well, what makes me want to hire you over this guy?
I think that people's concern here in the forums mainly is that the time. They don't like the mechanic that the limitation is time. I've heard it called lazy. They don't like that you can't just go and fly around to as many planets as you want. Like, I think that they're thinking of the game more like No Man's Sky or other games in which you can, just get in a ship and jump to star systems, as fast as you want, going wherever. Where Elite Dangerous is another good example where, there is still a time difference, but the time is much shorter, and getting to stars doesn't take nearly as long.
Well, this comes into the same conversation and topics as people that talk about wanting the game to have more realistic stuff or more immersive stuff. Like the food and water topic. How long has that thread gone on? People
Quite
are
a
still
while.
talking about it in food and water. And, for all the reasons that people want it are the exact same reasons that other people don't want it. And somebody brought up an interesting little video where they were talking about depth versus complexity. I think I brought this up once before. But, they're talking about, well, I don't want the game to be that complex. I'm like, well, what are you talking about here? What do you think the devs are aiming at here? This is a game where I can build my ships from scratch and program them with Lua and HTML. There is a level of complexity here that you are not getting past, and throwing in food and water is really not going to make it any more or less complex.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a game where it's going to take weeks or months to get to space in the first place. A game where it's going to take months to, like, send your probes out to all edges of space. Like, it just seems like that is a... I don't like the
Seems like they
complaint.
should have food just simply for the first survival part at least.
Yeah, like the first part of colonizing a planet would be, you have to build your crops. You have to build the colony. And I think that they, Nizeltar even said that on the forum at one point, like, exploring will have a level of difficulty, but, after you colonize a planet and done the initial work to prep it, then it gets easier. Of course, they haven't said anything about food, but they have it, on Facebook, they've talked about, survival mechanics in the game, all just depend on, how many people want it. Although...
Yeah, they were talking about, they mentioned hunting and things like that, and I thought, great, can I have the bow that you have in concept art?
And
That's...
I mean, people say things like, survival mechanics make games not fun. And then I think, like, did you ever play DayZ? Did you ever play any of these survival games? Like, if the fact that they're hard
Well,
and
you
that you
have to play
have
the
to go
DayZ
find
mod, not the standalone. But
DayZ mod, and like you have to go find food, you have to find your weapons. Like, of course, I'm not saying you have to find your weapons in Dual Universe, but I'm saying like the survival aspects of having to go and find food and forage and stay alive is part of what makes the game fun. It adds to the community, I think, if anything.
Well, it's just one of those things where they talk about, the guy talked about irreducible complexity. Yes, this is irreducibly complex for a reason, because that's what they were trying to make. And whether or not food is in there, I'm all for having food in there. I'm not against the reasons that people have against it. You've got some people saying, I don't want it to be Tamagotchis in space. I don't want to have to sit there and have to worry about eating all the time. And those are all, valid concerns. I, too, do not want to have to worry about eating all the time. That's why I have a job in the real world and I buy my own food.
I think a nice balance to it would be like, maybe if food was not as important, so you don't want to have to be eating every 5 minutes, clearly, if it was like every couple of hours,
you
something
don't eat
like
every
that.
5 minutes in real life. Why would you do it in game?
Exactly. And then the other angle I could see them coming at it is like, food gives you perks, but it's not absolutely required. Like food may increase the speed at which you regenerate health, or food may, give you other perks. I can't think of
Or
any off
allow
the
you
top of my
to
head.
actually regenerate health in the first place.
Yeah.
I was going to respond to Shadow Lord Alpha's little comment, and it's like, you don't eat food every 5 minutes in real life. And I just thought, have you met most Americans?
I think what's most important,
Yeah, that's true, actually. It's sad.
people should look at the game more like EVE Online than a freeform game like Star Citizen. And I think that's where some of the confusion and some of the disagreements are stemming from, is that the game is not like, it is not going to be a freeform, Minecraft game where you could just run off and do whatever you want, or like No Man's Sky where the only limit there is, your imagination and how much time you're willing to put into exploring, all manners of space. And it's not a free-form game in that respect. It is free-form in the respect that, EVE Online gives you, where, the limit is your imagination and your willingness to work with other people, and also the time you put into getting your skills. It's not like a free-form, full exploration game where you can just on day one go and explore space and do whatever you want. It's a lot more involved and a lot more complex, and it's certainly something that I think is exciting, but I can also understand why people are disappointed by that.
Well, you can't please everybody.
Nope. And we have people who we don't want to be pleased. Go away.
Absolutely. It just comes down to this game is going to fit a certain. It's not going to fit a niche itself. It's going to fit a niche of people. This game is going to attract a certain kind of crowd, and others are not going to like it for all the reasons that it is liked by those certain people.
Well, on that note, we're about an hour and a half into the show. I guess I just wanted to start wrapping this up. Of course, we'll all still be here in voice chat afterwards for those that want to join on our Discord, which is discord.me/dual universe.
Yep.
Dual universe. Discord.me/dual universe. Make sure to visit the Dual Universe Explorers website, duexplorers.com, and visit us on our Reddit at reddit.com/r/dual the game. Yeah, and so thank you everybody for tuning in, and I guess we will be here again next week, same time, same place. And with that, I will yield the floor for everybody else to say their goodbyes.
Thank you, Yama. I am Master Dreadstone, once again, founder of DOA and DO Explorer. I shall bid my farewells here.
I am Darius Sanguinatus, leader and founder of the Talent Union, signing out.
I'm
I
Morty in
am-
2000. Sorry. Go ahead. After you.
Well, we should really come up with an order for this. I am Shadow Lord Alpha. I'm the director of Silverlight Industries. And later, guys.
I'm Morty in 2000, resident space wizard, leader of nothing, destroyer of everything. Have a good night.
Neapolitan here, signing out. See you next time.
And I guess I'm last, Yamamushi. Catch everybody next week.